Growing up as the youngest in the Lawson family meant living in the long shadow of my brother Ryan, the family's golden boy. Every compliment, every ounce of praise seemed reserved for him. When he managed to scrape by with average grades, my parents celebrated as if he'd cured cancer. When I graduated at the top of my class 3 years later, all I got was a distracted "Congratulations, Emily," before the conversation drifted back to Ryan's newest potential. That was the rhythm of my childhood, my achievements fading into the background noise of Ryan's mediocrity. They never saw it as favoritism. They called it concern. Concerned that I was too quiet. Concerned that I took things too seriously. Concerned that my independence was just stubbornness. When I bought my first home at 25, a modest 2-bedroom house tucked in a quiet suburb, I thought, for once, they'd be proud. I'd saved relentlessly from my government job, eating noodles and skipping nights out just to make that down payment. When I called to share the news, my mother's first words weren't "Congratulations." "Are you sure that's a good idea, Emily? Houses are expensive." Ryan's laugh echoed in the background. "She can barely afford a car, Mom. This'll end in foreclosure by Christmas." I hung up that night with my heart sinking. My biggest victory had somehow turned into another reason they doubted me. Over time, my little house became my sanctuary, the one place untouched by my family's constant skepticism. Ryan drifted between jobs and apartments, always landing on his feet thanks to my parents' wallet. Meanwhile, I built stability, the kind no one in my family seemed capable of recognizing. When my department offered me a temporary assignment overseas, 6 months in Eastern Europe, I accepted without hesitation. It was important, classified work, and the pay was more than I'd ever earned. Before leaving, I set up automatic payments, hired a lawn service, and installed top-tier security. The last thing I did was hand my parents a spare key, only for emergencies. Ryan smirked as I explained the details. "You act like that little house of yours is the Pentagon," he said. I smiled tightly, just covering my bases. What I didn't know then was that I'd left more than a key behind. I'd left an opportunity, and Ryan had never met an opportunity he couldn't twist to his advantage. When I returned months later, the lock on my front door didn't recognize me anymore, and neither did my own family. The assignment overseas consumed every part of me. Days bled into nights under the cold hum of fluorescent lights as we pored over encrypted transactions and shell accounts that led to names I wasn't allowed to speak aloud. It was the kind of work that demanded silence, not just from my lips, but from my life. I called home when I could, brief conversations over static-filled lines. Mom always sounded distracted. Dad offered the same rehearsed comfort. "Everything's fine here." And Ryan, he never bothered to pick up. By the 5th month, I was sleeping in 3-hour intervals, my mind juggling both federal codes and fragments of home. The only place that anchored me was the thought of my house, that quiet, perfect symbol of independence I'd fought so hard to earn. So when my supervisor, Agent Reed, pulled me aside one morning, my stomach tightened before he even spoke. "There's been some activity linked to your property," he said, sliding a thin file across the table. I frowned. "What kind of activity?" "Paperwork," he replied. "Someone filed a property transfer, claiming ownership of your house." The world seemed to tilt. "That's impossible. I never—" "I know," Reed interrupted, his tone calm but clipped. "It's flagged as suspicious because of your clearance level. We need to verify it's not a security breach." I could barely hear him over the roaring in my ears. Ownership transfer. My address. My name. The flight home was a blur of turbulence and dread. The moment I pulled into my street, my breath caught. The lawn looked neat. Too neat. A fresh "sold" sign gleamed under the morning sun, its colors so bright they burned. I ran to the door, my hands shaking, fumbling for the key that no longer fit. Panic clawed its way up my chest. I called the number printed on the real estate sign. "Lawson Realty," chirped a bright voice. "This is Emily Lawson. Someone put a 'sold' sign on my property, my house, and I need to know what's going on." There was a pause. "Oh, you must be Ryan's sister. He told us you might call. He said you'd agreed to let him handle the sale." I froze. "Excuse me?" "He presented power of attorney documents. Everything looked legitimate. The sale closed last week." For a moment, the world went completely still. Ryan had sold my house, and somehow everyone, the agents, the title company, maybe even my parents, believed him. But if Ryan thought this was just about property, he was about to discover he'd crossed into something much bigger and far more dangerous. I barely remember driving to my parents' house. My thoughts were spinning too fast to land anywhere solid. The moment I stepped through the front door, I was hit by the smell of roast chicken, laughter, and music. My old home, the one I'd worked so hard for, was gone, but my family was celebrating. "Emily!" Mom beamed, her arms open wide. "You're back sooner than we thought!" My eyes darted around the living room, stopping on a banner stretched across the fireplace. "Congratulations, Ryan." Glittering letters mocked me from above the mantel. Ryan stood in the center of the room, drink in hand, the hero of his own story. "Look who finally made it home," he said with that familiar smirk. "Guess you heard the good news?" I forced my voice to stay even. "The good news being that you sold my house?" The room fell quiet, but only for a moment. Mom stepped forward, her tone soft, like she was soothing a child. "Emily, honey, Ryan explained everything. You were behind on payments. The bank was about to foreclose. He saved your credit." "I wasn't behind," I said, each word sharp as glass. "My payments were automatic." Ryan chuckled, the sound casual but hollow. "I saw the statements. 3 months overdue. You should be thanking me. I got you out before it ruined your finances." My father's voice joined in, steady and confident. The voice of a man who believed he was reasonable. "Ryan showed us the paperwork, sweetheart. The mortgage company confirmed it." My pulse pounded. "Show me the papers." Ryan reached for a folder and handed it to me like he was presenting evidence in his favor. "You even signed a power of attorney before you left. Said it was just in case something happened overseas." I stared at the page, my signature perfectly replicated, right down to the tiny flick at the end of the Y. Too perfect. My stomach twisted. "Ryan," I said slowly, "I never signed this." He rolled his eyes. "You don't remember, that's all. You were stressed about leaving." Around us, my parents nodded sympathetically, already rewriting the story in their heads. The overwhelmed daughter rescued by her responsible brother. But I knew better. Ryan had forged it. He'd stolen my identity and sold my home. And the worst part? My family believed him. What Ryan didn't realize was that my house wasn't just a house. It was federal property under surveillance. And his favor had just triggered an investigation that could destroy him. The flashing red and blue lights painted our living room in colors of judgment and disbelief. The banner that read "Congratulations, Ryan" hung limply above the mantel, its cheer hollow under the weight of reality. 4 agents entered, their presence absolute, calm, professional, unshakable. "Emily Lawson?" the lead agent asked. I nodded. He turned to Ryan. "Ryan Lawson, you are under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and the illegal transfer of federally monitored property." The sound of handcuffs closing around his wrists echoed like a verdict, years in the making. My mother cried out, "Please, he didn't mean to hurt anyone." The agent's expression didn't change. "Intent doesn't negate the crime, ma'am. Your son forged federal documents." Ryan looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. His bravado was gone, replaced by disbelief and something like shame. "Emily, I thought I was helping you." "I know," I whispered, my throat tight, "but you never asked if I needed help." They led him out the door as my parents watched in stunned silence. The house felt impossibly still once the sirens faded into the distance. I sat down, staring at the half-empty glasses on the table, the remnants of a celebration that had turned into an arrest scene. Dad was the first to speak. "We didn't see it, did we?" His voice cracked under the weight of years of denial. "We thought you were fragile when you were the strongest one here." I didn't respond. I couldn't. For years, I had begged quietly, not for approval, but for recognition. Tonight, the FBI had given it to me instead. In the weeks that followed, the fallout unfolded like a slow-motion disaster. The buyers, a young couple, cooperated fully and were reimbursed through the federal restitution program. The real estate agent lost her license for negligence. The title company faced an audit that nearly shut it down. Ryan pleaded guilty. At sentencing, he admitted what we all knew deep down. "I didn't do this to help my sister," he told the judge. "I did it because I couldn't stand that she succeeded where I failed." He got 4 years in federal prison. I visited him once. He looked smaller somehow, not just physically, but emotionally. "You were never the failure, Emily," he said softly. "I was." When I moved back into my house months later, the security system had been upgraded, the locks changed, the memories harder to erase. My parents tried to rebuild trust, slowly, awkwardly. They'd lost both their illusions and their their favorite son in one night. Agent Reed still sends me a Christmas card every year. Last year's read, "Hope things are quieter on the home front." They are, but sometimes in the quiet of that same little house, I still hear the echo of handcuffs and realize something profound. The people who think they know you best can also be the ones who see you the least, because sometimes the real crime isn't what's written in federal law. It's the lifelong habit of underestimating the wrong person. My phone buzzed against my palm, a secure line, one I hadn't used since returning from Europe. I excused myself, stepping onto the back porch. "This is Agent Lawson," I said. A familiar voice responded, clipped and tense. "Agent Lawson, this is Reed. We've got federal flags lighting up across multiple departments. Your property was listed in a fraudulent transfer, and that address is under classified monitoring." I felt the air leave my lungs. "Reed, my brother did this." "Then your brother just committed a federal offense. Sit tight. We're en route." I hung up slowly, staring at the horizon while the weight of that sentence sank in. My brother just committed a federal offense. When I walked back inside, the celebration was unraveling. My parents' laughter had faded into uneasy whispers. Ryan was pacing near the couch, flipping through his folder like the papers might rewrite themselves if he looked long enough. "Everything okay?" Mom asked, her smile brittle. "No," I said, "not even close." Ryan tried for his usual swagger. "What's wrong, Em?" "Still mad I saved you from foreclosure?" I met his eyes. "Ryan, do you have any idea what you've done?" He blinked. "I sold your house." "Big deal. I was helping you." "You forged federal documents. My residence is registered under government protection due to my clearance. Any unauthorized sale triggers a national security review." The color drained from his face. "Come on, Emily. That's ridiculous." "The FBI doesn't think so," I said quietly. "They're already confiscating the transaction records." Dad frowned. "Emily, this sounds extreme. Ryan didn't mean any harm." "That doesn't matter," I replied. "Intent doesn't erase federal charges." Ryan's confidence collapsed all at once. He dropped the folder onto the floor, papers scattering like shattered glass. I thought you were in trouble. I called the bank." "Which number?" I interrupted. "The real one? Or the first result on some scam website?" He froze. I nodded slowly. "You handed sensitive personal data to criminals pretending to be my mortgage company. They probably helped you verify your fake foreclosure." Mom gasped. "Oh my God." My phone buzzed again. One final message from Reed. "Agents on site. 2 minutes." Ryan's hands trembled. "Emily, what's going to happen?" I looked at my brother, the golden boy, the family's pride, now pale and sweating under the weight of what he'd done. "Whatever happens next," I said, "you brought it here yourself." Outside, car doors slammed. When the agents walked in, badges gleaming, it wasn't just my brother's freedom on the line. It was every illusion my family had ever believed about who we were.